Need a new phone? Buy the latest model for the best price.
Ready to do this? Let's do it! They say it pays the cost to be the boss. Time to show 'em who's in charge.
Praise the Lord for my eyes, anything crash with his beat. I thank the Lord for my that I smash every week. I put it all in the guts and now go fast asleep.
Since she been on me for months, and left my message on scene. I put it to you like this. You dust me in this, I let you have that bitch.
Open that mosh pit up.
Let's go.
Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. It's that time of the week. It is time for some more CTC. Today we arrive at Austria for round number 2 of this second season here in the competitive team championship. I am your race commentator, More Games, and joined alongside me is Alex the G. And how are you doing for what will be your first round this season?
Yeah, indeed. I'm really happy to be back in here. Of course, welcome as well to everybody who will hopefully already be in the chat. I hope you are very much ready with, well, something to eat, something to drink perhaps, because Austria, oh my, what a race it usually delivers. And yeah, really, really excited. I'm so glad to be back in this commentary box with you and can't wait to get this underway.
Well, CTC always provides some great action, and when you mix in a bit of Austria, anything can happen. So, super excited for today's Grand Prix. And as you can see on your screens, this is how the championship is going in after the first round of the season. I think it was only Talent Factory and Team Mentalism, or no, it was G League and Talent Factory that were the only two teams in the first round of the season to have two drivers in the points paying positions, and that is why Talent Factory is currently leading the team's championship, with Brader scoring a maximum 16 points after winning the Grand Prix with the fastest lap of the race. So that is why Talent Factory is currently leading. FVR is in P2, and NLR find themselves in a comfortable and familiar P3 in the standings, just 9 points behind Talent Factory. So that's how the standings are shaping out. Obviously, we have ETA Esports in P4, Team Mentalism in P5. Outplayed Racing didn't have the best opening round to the season, with OP Robbie losing the win due to time penalties, and OP Tim really struggling with his consistency. We then have G League Esports in P7, VIR in P8, and we have the two QRT teams, the main team in P9 and QRT Academy at the bottom of the standings, both with 0 points respectively. But yeah, it looks like Talent Factory looks like they're definitely going to be at the top as they were last season. Something we're definitely used to by now. NLR also in the top 3, but FVR had a very nice showing last time out. They're now P2 in the standings. Do you think maybe a team that could possibly challenge for the title this season?
I'm going to answer that with a straight up yes, because FBR, we know how strong they are from other championships as well. And yeah, we've seen in general there's been a lot of mistakes and a fair bit of attrition actually, with just 2 points, two teams scoring double points in this Australian Grand Prix. So I think once they get their consistency sorted out over both drivers, we might be able to see a super close title fight. Talent Factory do, however, mean business. So that win from Bradders certainly is a big statement to the rest that this championship will not be an easy thing to achieve for any of the teams involved. Yeah, and all those teams really behind TF, FAR, perhaps NLR as well. Yeah, they are going to be having a very, very hard time to come back and really snatch something good away from this. Yeah, not many surprise winners we had last season as well, so it's tough to call, but FVR with Talent Factory as well, they will definitely be in the mix up top, and certainly got the drivers as well to challenge and to match this kind of expectation. I mean, Stefano there in that first slot with Nadi Perez, the two main drivers for FVR, they are going to be in business today as well. I mean, with such a short track, anything can happen, particularly in qualifying, of course, and those gaps are going to be minimal, absolutely pretty much non-existent as well. So super tight stuff, I think, upcoming, and qualifying might just decide a fair bit of how this race is going to go.
Yeah, and also you can see how close the standings are as well. We had a very competitive last round, and in Austria, like you said, a track that promotes overtaking with its 3 DRS zones. Hopefully, we'll have even more overtaking action, and yeah, it should be hopefully an exciting round 2. And just gonna get Alex G into the lobby here so we can begin the qualifying session and basically get this qualifying this round underway, and it should hopefully be an exciting one. So yeah, coming into this qualifying session, you can see the team lineups here. So just to go through them before we start qualifying, VIR bringing Marlon and Daniel to the table in the black Mercedes car, or technically silver, since this is the F122 game, getting ahead of myself with the 2023 season. For NLR, we have Rudy Hullett and Axelino will be in the car this round. Talent Factory, Keane and Bradders, as it was last round. Nardi, Perez and Stefano, both making another appearance in this round number 2. G League bring Matteo and also Grimbos in the Williams. For QRT's Academy, it's going to be QRT Ryan and QRT Javi. OP bringing Ray and Benza to this round, so really switching it up and bringing two new drivers in the AlphaTauri. For QRT's main team, we have Ralkio and Hein in the Alpine. Team meant this bring Nico and Kilcree as they were last round, and then ETA bringing Lattice and Janu to this second round of the season. So there is your driver lineup for tonight's qualifying session and Grand Prix. Any drivers in that grid that you think could possibly have an outside chance of doing particularly well? Maybe something that we didn't see last round.
I'm just casting my mind back to the race that we had last season here in Austria, where we had a very, very mixed up and pretty much also a very chaotic race as well. Which saw Janu for the ETA team really perform very well. So to be honest, I'm pretty glad to see him back on this grid tonight, and hopefully they'll be out in full force as well. But from the more unexpected drivers, I would say the qualifying will probably do too much to really cause a big upset in this grid. So I'm seeing those main PSGL F1 protagonists up top as well, really with Marlon, Stefano up there as well. Lots of top drivers in here, but the qualifying pace really depends on how you can get all those laps right. And yeah, certainly a very close session upon us. But I don't see a big upset happening unless there's somebody on a magical lap, something I might expect from somebody like QRT Raukio or maybe one of the OP drivers as well, as we haven't seen too much of them yet in event races, in team event races. So Ray and Benza, I'm sure they will be looking to deliver something good as well after a first round that maybe wasn't to the top of Outplayed Racing's expectations.
And now, before we jump into this qualifying session, just a quick word from All right, you can see we are now arriving at this Styrian circuit for the qualifying session today, and definitely going to be an interesting one. So drivers prepare themselves and getting ready to set the quickest lap times possible so they can really get themselves ready and in a good position for today's Grand Prix. Although track position might not be everything at this circuit. 3 DRS zones all in a row at this very short circuit. You're only going to be seeing 1 minute 3-second lap time. So not a lot of time it takes to get around one complete lap at this circuit. That's why we're going to have 36 laps for today's Grand Prix, and the drivers all getting out there nice and quickly now to begin their first lap times of this session. So well, I know it's early in the session, no one set a lap time just yet, but purely just looking at the lineups that we have so far, if you had to pick one man for pole position, who would you go with for today's Austrian qualifying session?
Very tough ask, this, I will say. There are lots of drivers. I think Kian, the first one to head out on the track, perhaps he's trying to set a statement here, being the first on the track. I'm seeing him as a contender, really, for this pole position, but his teammate Bradders, I think, will be up there as well. Somebody like Benza, I think, can surprise on qualifying pace too. But yeah, the top contender that I'm seeing today, to be honest, well, is a bit out there maybe, but at the same time for the FER team, I'm feeling like I've got some money here on Stefano as he's just heading out into turn 3 now. I think he'll be the one who might just be fronting this grid.
And we'll have to see how he does. But first, Talent Factory Kian is coming out of the final turn. So let's ride on board for a complete lap of this Austrian circuit. You can see into turn 1 braking just before the 50-meter board. And just getting one tyre onto that apex there. I don't want to ride it as it can really unsettle these floor cars. With obviously the new 2023 regulations, the floor is where all your downforce is coming from, so you definitely don't want to unsettle that as Talent Factory Kiem comes out of the tricky traction zone of turn number 3 and then downhill braking into this next turn number 4. You want a nice flowing line through here as he hits a late apex to get a good run into the next turn number 5. You can see trying to carry as much speed as possible through here. Don't want to ride the curb on the inside as a very easy way to lose the back end as he's going very aggressive now through this middle sector, riding the curbs as much as possible. And now into the final 2 turns, you need some really precise steering here to hit your apexes and get the best exits possible. And you can see Kian using the full width of the circuit and across the line, a very short lap time indeed. And he sets a 1 minute 4 second 0.428, and that is going to be the first lap time of this session, which gets instantly beaten by the QRT driver of Ralkio, who goes to a 104.2, a great lap time there from the QRT driver. You can see more lap times coming in as OP Benza goes to P2 with a 104.3. Good lap time there from the QRT driver in his debut qualifying session here for his team in CTC. You can see the other QRT driver of Helm is now coming through turn number 1, a lot more aggressive on that first turn there, taking a lot more of that yellow sausage curb on the inside, getting a little bit of a slipstream off of the NLR driver before coming into the heavy braking zone of turn number 3, hitting an early apex here and not actually using a lot of the curb on the exit of that turn 3, as it looks like your pole position prediction goes to provisional pole position with a 104.222. That's FVR Stefano, who finds himself in P1. QRT Hein coming out of turn number 4 now, and through the middle sector he goes. And you can see a little bit wide through that turn, but trying to make up for it on the exit by getting as close to the white lines as possible. And that's really what you have to do at a circuit as short as this. You need to be pushing the limits at every single turn. Otherwise, you are not going to be getting the lap time that you really want to do well in this session. QRT Hein coming out of the final corner of the circuit, and he goes to P11 with a 104.7. You can see quite a few drivers yet to set lap times in this session. FVR Nardi Paris struggling to set lap times. He set 2 lap times on the soft compound of tires, neither of which were valid. Nico is currently on a lap as he heads through turn number 4. A snap of oversteer there for Nico. You can see Lattice for ET8 currently on his outlap, and Axelinho and Bradders, the Drivers' Championship leaders, struggling to set lap time at the start of the session. So how do you think that's going to hinder him in this session, not being able to set that initial banker time?
I would say this certainly depends on the tire allocation that the drivers would have gone for, because obviously such a short lap time, some drivers might also just go risk it, think that they can live with just having one set of mediums and hards each, and as a trade-off have 4 runs in qualifying. So depending on what they would have gone for, I think this is what will set the difference here. But obviously not getting a banker lap time downright is never a good start to a session, as particularly for NLR and TF. They've got Kian in P5, they've got Ruti Hullet there in P8. But yeah, the gap's so close. We've got a P5 to P8 in the 104.4s, and already a lot of drivers now heading back out for a second run, which is pretty early, I would say, from my personal experience. That's very early to head out on the second lap. I think latest is one to just finish a lap there in that Haas car for ET8. Come around the final corner here, looking pretty good actually, is latest, and he goes up to P5, so 104.3 is slotting in very nicely there into that top 5. But Kian is another one who will be starting out on a lap soon. I think he's got more ambitious. We know how good his qualifying pace is, and just setting out on this second run of the session. Still about 12 minutes to go, so just a third of the session that's already been passed. But now it's going to really count for Kian. Super wide out of turn 1, as he's really got that down very well. And yeah, he's still lacking 0.2 up to the top driver. But now in this first sector, he's just about down 0.007 of a second slower than his initial first sector. And now onto the second DRS straight. Important to get a good exit, which he has done. Now into 8th gear. Oh, he backs off actually. As well, that is a bit surprising in my eyes. Maybe he hasn't got that good an exit, or maybe he thinks that he's got more lap time down in himself. But another driver to look out for right now, Marlon as well, just heading through this first sector, just 8/1000ths behind his nearest competitor. It's so close. And this is just going to keep going as his teammate Daniel as well is just 6/1000ths behind his teammate. Super close stuff, and I think this is only going to continue with a lot of drivers now starting on their laps. Got Axelinho as well, just heading through turn 1, and he's going to try to get a lap time down now for NLR. Currently P9, P19 for the Red Bull outfit. Last season, of course, in P3, but these two teams with NLR and Talent Factory haven't got a lap time down at the back. They'll be looking to do so very swiftly. Bradders now in this middle sector, 44.6 is certainly looking strong. He's definitely going to be competing for these top spots. Such a quick development he's made, Bradders, winning this opening round. And now through the final corner, where is he going to slot in? Very good run. Hasn't used all the maximum of the track, but it's still going to be a very good lap up to P2. The front row it is for the moment. And that is another statement just out of the box. Spencer actually beats that by 0.004 of a second, goes on the front row himself. It's so close up here, and it's just going to keep going. The laps will be flowing in, and oh my, it's just half the second gone with, oh my, well, this is just close as hell now. Daniel up top, 400s ahead of Stefano, super close.
There you go. VIR Daniel taking provisional pole position, the first man on a 104.1, but FVR Stefano, he's also on a lap time, and he had a great banker of a 104.2. Can he now improve on that and retake that provisional pole position as he comes through the final turn, carrying so much speed through there? Good exit, and across the line, he is going to set a 104.1, just missing out on that provisional pole position by 1/100th of a second. VIR Daniel has set a great lap time there for the Mercedes team, and one he can be really happy with. But you can see, just like last season, it's OP versus TF at the top of the field. Well, not quite the top, as the front row has neither the Ferrari or an AlphaTauri driver there, but you can see OP in P3 and P5 with Talent Factory right behind them in P4 and P6. But that's a great and surprising lap time from VIR Daniel, a 104.1 to put him in provisional pole position. I mean, that is an absolutely astonishing lap, and a great job from him. VIR Marlin now just has to follow in his footsteps. He's currently down in P8 on a 104.3, but there's plenty of time to improve, and the track is going to slowly continue to evolve, and hopefully we see those lap times tumble. You can see a couple of drivers on some different running patterns, so we're seeing a few drivers go out at different times, possibly trying to get 4 lap times in, or get the track when it's at its clearest, because obviously traffic plays a big factor at this circuit since it is so short. But you can see QRT Rauco is coming out of turn number 3 for QRT. Currently finds himself in P7, and the QRT main team in the Alpine car currently have 0 points to their name in this championship. So to have a driver in the top 7 right now is looking fairly decent for them. But he does actually back off of his lap out of turn number 4. So deciding that he's just not improving by enough to continue on. So he's going to slow down, recharge the ERS, and go for another lap time. As that's Il Janu for ET8, who goes to the top 8. That puts 2 of the ET8 drivers in the top 10. They're currently P4 in the championship. Definitely keep an eye out for them. Il Janu scored a podium for ET8 last time here in Austria, and the first podium of their championship last time out, and what a performance it was from Janu. We'll have to see if he can replicate it this season, and obviously he's quite talented at this Austrian circuit. But if we move back to the battle for a pole position, we now have Talent Factory and OP having both of their drivers in the top 6, as is the norm here in CTC. But we have FVR Stefano and VIR Daniel currently on the provisional front row of the grid, and it looks like they're really pushing hard to battle for this pole position.
Yeah, these two drivers really known to be particularly very strong qualifiers. I think particularly Daniel is doing his name a big favor here by being on top of all of these drivers right now. We've just had Grimbos crossing the line, who hasn't not been able to improve on his lap. but Ruti Hullet, I think one of the next ones here. Of course, OP versus Talent Factory there, P3 to P6 on this lineup, but the gaps it's absolutely incredible. The 4 drivers find themselves within 5/1000ths of a second, and just 700ths of a second as well to the top of the field. So this is just displaying how close the gaps are here at Austria. And certainly now with all these lap times flying in, I think Ruti Hullet, as I just said, is one of the first to follow up on his first run, as he currently finds himself just outside of the top 10, but is now improving by 0.2 of a second, which could just carry him towards this top 3 to P3 to P6 pack, which is looking so incredibly close. And let's have a look now at his final 2 corners. How does he manage these 2 right-handers here? Very fast. Cannot invalidate on the exit, which he does well. So let's see Ruti Hullet now puts himself right into P3. 2/100ths ahead of OP Benza, still 0.5 behind VIR Daniel, the pace setter right now. So it looks like a very strong lap so far. Latest, though, beats that by 4/100ths of a second. We have a new challenger up top, and this is looking exciting.
It's really anyone's game. Everyone just coming out of nowhere and stealing that provisional pole position. And it happens again because OP Benza now goes to provisional pole with a 104.1. A great lap time from the OP driver. Bradders invalidates his 3rd lap time of the session. So does Ray, so does Kian. So 3 of the OP and Talent Factory drivers invalidating their lap times. OP Benza was the only one out of that group to improve, and he got quite the improvement because he finds himself in P1. ET8 have a driver on the provisional front row of the grid, just 3/100ths behind OP Benza. VIR have 2 drivers in the top 5, currently the best and most consistent result provisionally in this qualifying session. So VIR have the best result right now. We'll have to see if they can hold on to it, but FVR Stefano is currently on a lap as he comes out of turn number 1. And he's going up the hill now, 2/100ths up on his time through the first sector, which only consists of about 1 turn. But you can see FVR Stefano, he's pushing so hard for this pole position, gets on the power a bit too early and loses the rear end slightly. Keeps it on track though, and he's now heading down into turn 4, hitting a late apex as is the usual at that turn. You want to get the best exit possible to get a good run coming into this next turn number 6. That's Bradders now, who went for a 2nd lap time in a row on those soft compound tires. He finds himself in a top 3 position now, just slots himself ahead of VIR Daniel. FVR Stefano now, he is in the final sector of the lap time, but it does look like he will be abandoning this lap. He's coming into the pit lane because there's only 3.5 minutes to go in this session. And he wants to make sure that he has enough time to set one final lap when the track evolution is at its best. But you can see the grid, it's all over the place. You cannot predict who is going to get pole position here. We have 2 VIR drivers in the top 6. We have OP and Talent Factory currently in P8 and P9 along with P1 and P3. FVR have a driver in the top 5 along with ET8. NLR have P7 and P11 at the moment. QRT in the form of Ralco, just about holding on to that top 10 position ahead of Axelinho, and Team Mentalist struggling, currently down at the very back row of the grid in P19 and P10, and also Nardi Perez finds himself down in P14. The drivers are scattered all over the place, and I think we're going to have quite the exciting end to this qualifying session where the gaps are just so small between everyone.
Yeah, indeed. I think the last runs are going to be starting fairly soon, though. I think we can see drivers heading out as late as about 1.5 minutes, maybe, with the session left to go. As I've just seen a slipstream attempt there from Team Mentalism not quite go to fruition there. Nico has been able to improve as much as maybe would have wanted to, but some of the laps now starting out already. I think Kian is one of the candidates right now who's just heading out of turn 3. The Talent Factory driver just under 1.5 tenths down and finds himself in P9. This is incredibly close, but he is improving slightly through this first sector. So let's have a look now in his middle sector split as a Red Bull crossing the line there as well. I think that's Ruti Hullet starting his probably final run of the session. But TF Kian, we know how quick he is in qualifying, just heading through turn 6 now, and he is up by just 2/100ths of a second, and that is not enough in the grid this close. That's very much on edge there on the track limits from the Ferrari man. The Red Bull getting out of the way there of Axelinho, I think that is. And now through these final two corners, Kians needs something magic there in the final corner, goes wide and invalidates this final attempt. So he cannot get an improvement down. And that would have put him about P4, maybe the second row of the grid. But now we need to look out for more drivers. Ruti Hullet being one of the next as well. But Benza, he's just gone wide there, perhaps trying to let some drivers through. This is now very tight, of course, having to let these drivers go at the right times. Grimbo's crossing the line for 14th at the moment. But those final runs, the final minute of the session, about to commence. Who is going to be on top? I cannot predict this at all.
You definitely cannot, as the top four drivers all getting ready to set their final laps, with OP Benza ending off his first sector split. NLR Rudy Hullet goes to provisional pole position by that's 8/1000ths of a second. He is on pole position for NLR, but I'm sure we're going to see a change there as OP Benza is coming into the middle sector, into turn number 4 now, heavy braking on the downhill braking zone as he uses the full width of the track there, using all of the curb to possibly maximize his exit. He wants to gain as much time as possible. Every single 1,000th of a second counts at this Austrian circuit now. Into the final sector of the lap time. He's only got 2 more turns to go, as NLR are currently both drivers in the top 5, with Axelinho going up to a 104.1. That puts him in P5. A little bit sketchy there on the exit of turn number 9 for OP Benza, and he invalidates his lap time, so he is not going to be improving, and he would have taken provisional pole by sending a 104 flat there, but it doesn't look like it was meant to be. As you can see, Lattice for ET8 is coming into turn 4 now. He finds himself in the top 3 and only 4/100ths off of that provisional pole time. It's every chance he's got to take this pole position for today's Grand Prix, but he's going to need to find big improvement, which he can't, because he goes wide coming out of turn number 6 and invalidates along with Bradders, who also invalidates his lap time. VIR Daniel is off of the circuit at turn number 7. VIR Marlon shoots up to P3, and it looks like not many drivers are on a lap time. So I think at the end of this session now, the NLR driver of Rudy Hullet is going to be taking pole position for today's Grand Prix. A fantastic result for NLR, getting both of their drivers into the top 6, and they have gotten the most consistent result and the best result out of the entire field today in qualifying. And what a performance, showing that they really are a top 3 team and not a team to be reckoned with. NLR Rudy Hullet takes pole position by 8/1000ths of a second ahead of OP Benza.
Super close stuff. I don't think I can really be any harmed or anything about the prediction, because Stefano in P8 just 87,000ths of a second behind. I mean, the top 8 are covered by 1/10 of a second. The top 12 covered by 2/10. So close, so close. And I think Ryan at the back even can't be too disgruntled with this lap time. Just half a second off pole, and that leaves you in last position. That's just how tight this is. And don't we just love to see this? NLR Rudy Hullet on pole position, sharing the front row with Outplayed Racing there as well. Benza in P2. But I think big challenges are going to be awaiting the drivers here. Such a closed grid. I can't wait to see how this is going to unfold. Setups are obviously going to play a role in this too. Looking at the lap times, I don't think there's going to be any weather affecting this race. But I think Chad has got a better answer to that. So your full grid lineup is definitely looking very exciting, very mixed up as well, for sure.
So there you go. Here is the final results here in the qualifying session. At the end of it all, the top 8 separated by less than 1/10 of a second, showing that the gaps are quite fine at this Austrian circuit. Rudy Hullet and Benza on the front row of the grid, with Marlon and Lattice on the second row. Bradders takes the third row of the grid alongside Axelinho. Daniel and Stefano on the 4th. Ray and Kian on the 5th. Nardi Perez lines up alongside Ralkio. Janu and Matteo on the 7th, Javi and Hein on the 8th, Grimbos, Nico lining up on the 9th, and I think it was QRT Ryan starting P20 alongside Kilcree in P19. So there is your full grid for today's race, and yeah, it just goes to show at most circuits the gaps are in the tenths. 2/10 of a second is usually a pretty average gap at most circuits, but here in Austria it's more like 2/100ths of a second, which is exactly what was splitting the top 3 of today's qualifying session. So if the gaps are that fine in qualifying, you can guarantee yourself that today is going to have a very, very close race with plenty of battling. 3 DRS zones means we're going to see a little bit of a DRS train, and if you even make the slightest of mistakes, you will see yourself tumbling down the order. It's so crucial that you keep it consistent at a track that's it's quite difficult to keep it consistent here. There's so many turns that can catch you out, a lot of curbs that can unsettle your car, and you need to make sure that you leave room and pick your battles very, very carefully in this race. Obviously, turn 1, you don't want to be going side by side through there, as you're either going to lose a lot of time or find yourself spinning out of the Grand Prix. But I think we're going to see plenty of overtakes into turn 3 and turn 4, and maybe even a couple of dive bombs into those 2 turns, as both have very heavy braking zones. But the drivers are now ready, fine-tuning their setups and getting their hard compound tires ready for what will most likely be a hard medium strategy. It's now 3 more seconds till the drivers get ready for today's Grand Prix. And as we see them all lined up on today's grid, we have 3, 4, 5 red lights. They're gone. We're away after a very quick start. What kind of start is it for our pole man of NLR, Rudy Hullett, up against OP Benza? It looks like a decent one into turn 1 with the outside line. He maintains his race lead. VIR Marlin trying to overtake OP Benza, but in turn loses a position to Lattice, and now Bradders overtaking VIR Marlin as they look to go side by side into turn number 3. Lattice is looking to the outside line of OP Benza, and it looks like he might get this move done. Benza trying to get the better exit out of turn number 3, but Lattice moves himself up into P2 now. VIR Marlin just about getting back ahead of Bradders as they head down into turn number 4, and it's been a good race start for Rudy Hullett, who maintains the race lead off of this initial lap as they head through the middle sector. Now you're not going to see too many overtaking opportunities here, but you can see Lattice has had an amazing start, jumping both Benza and Marlin to move himself up into a top 2 position. So far it's looking like a brilliant start for ETA. Talent Factory Kean, who started from P10 on the grid, making the big moves. He moves up 4 positions to go up to P6 now, and you can see we're seeing plenty of overtaking, and one driver coming into the pit lane, that is VIR Daniel, who has to box, and if you wonder where he went, he must have gotten wing damage there, as he now comes into the pit lane, has to get his front wing repaired, and goes on to the medium compounded tire. What a shame to see his race go like that. The man who started in P7, I think it was, sadly now falling all the way to the very back of the grid, but that is how the cookie has crumbled for VIR Daniel. But it's been an impressive race start for NLR, well, at least on one side of the garage, because NLR Axelinho has fallen down from P6 to P9. You can see Kilcree now has gotten the better exit ahead of Javi into turn number 6, and he moved himself up into a top 11 position, moving up 8 positions from his original starting position of P19. It's been a great start for the Team Mentalist driver, as he now finds himself on the cusp of points in this race.
Kilcree indeed there in the midfield with a fantastic start, coming all the way from the back to almost looking at the points here. But Rudy Hullett, as you said, a very good start from him. Latest though, having this brilliant advantage there at the race start, going from P4 all the way to 2nd, and definitely looking to pressure. Benza going a bit wide there actually, exiting turn 1. This might invite Marlon into a little bit of an opportunity here into turn 3. Will the German driver be looking at something? Is looking to the outside, trying to get that DRS down. He's very late on the brakes to the outside of turn 3. Can he now get the power down? Can the Mercedes contact? As Bradders behind might just be having a look into this now as well. Benza losing the place to Marlon for now, but I'm sure he might have a word with this. Bradders now to the outside into turn 4. It's a very off-camber corner here. He's going to get some space. Good racing there from Benza, who's leaving the space for Bradders, but he's going to come back to the inside. Bradders now up to P4. It looks like still side by side the 2 drivers are, and it looks like Bradders got the job done. Great overtaking maneuver, profiting from this slight dodgy moment there between Marlon and Benza. And Bradders up to P4. He's underlining his ambitions right now, isn't he? As Rudy Hullett keeps leading this race for the moment. A lot of action there as well going on at the back. There's only really been one big, slightly dodgy moment there at the race start, which has resulted in Daniel having to obviously replace that front wing, now trading the field by about 40 seconds or so, which is a shame to see, but there's always something that can happen. There's now a slight chasm as well going on from the top 10, and then Kilcree there in P11. but certainly none of this is done just yet for anybody outside of that top 10. And now that everything is calming down a little bit with the DRS, there's a spin behind there. Nadi Perez losing his front wing, and that is a very unusual sight and certainly not a good one for the FVR team as Nico makes his way past Ryan there in the midfield. Up into P16. Certainly nothing lost there just yet. Looking at the tires as well, we've only had one driver actually start on the medium compound tires, which was G-League's Matthew, who I'm sure would have liked to make up a few more positions. I think the reason as well for Daniel being so far back is that he had to pit again and go onto a set of hard compound tires instead of having to be on those mediums, just so that he can then, in case of a safety car, pit in later on for a new set of mediums. As Ryan now making his way past Nico again, who must have made some kind of mistake in this middle sector, drops back down to P18. So some of that work, unfortunately, undone for the Frenchman. For the Belgian driver, for the French team Mentalism. Back down to P18 as Lee's got his teammate to fall back onto, is currently in a P11, but this DRS is so powerful. It's going to be hard to make up spots as Kian very close to the back of Benza. He's going to go to the inside. A very late move from Kian, and it looks like he's got the job done for the moment. Follows his teammate through on Benza. Good start from Kian. They're still side by side though. Benza to the outside of turn 4. Can he make this one work now on the outside? He backs out of it for the moment. Now he's going to try the switchback if he can, but it looks like Kian's got the traction down. 4 and 5 now for Talent Factory. They are certainly underlining their ambitions again. And Kian coming all the way from, I believe, P10 it was, now to P5. Great start. Great few opening laps from him. 4 and 5 for Talent Factory. Great stuff from them.
And we're also seeing Javi and Kilcree go side by side through turn 7 and now 8, and they're still going to be side by side. They've been side by side through the entire middle sector, and now Kilcree is going to have the inside line for turn number 9, but he concedes the position to Javi. It's been a great battle between these two for the past couple of laps, but it is now the Aston Martin up into P11, and since they've been battling so much, they find themselves 2.7 seconds off of the back of the leading DRS train, which currently consists of the top 10 drivers. So, this is definitely a bit unlucky for them, as obviously the top 10 positions are the ones that score points. You can see that's NLR Rudy Hullett, who's gone off at turn number 3, and I think that was because of contact from behind, and possibly because of Lattice, because now he has fallen down the order to what is now P9. So both drivers losing out because of that. Rudy Hullett getting back ahead of him, but I think that was an incident there between the 88 driver and the NLR driver, and what a shame to see, because Rudy Hullett was doing a fantastic job out in front, but now all the way down to P9. I don't think he has wing damage as he makes his way through the middle sector and now the final sector. It looks like he's still got some decent grip, but what a shame to see the race leader, his fall from grace. He did a great job to get pole position, has been leading for the last 5 laps of the Grand Prix, but sadly an incident between himself and Lattice through turn number 3 finds himself now down into P9. That's such a shame to see, as Ray coming through turn number 1. A very sketchy moment there, just about keeps his car on circuit, as it looks like OP is going to make a switch of positions. Ray has the upper hand in the ERS situation, so he is going to try and launch an attack on the 2 Talent Factory drivers who currently have an opportunity to take the lead of this Grand Prix. And Bradders, he's not using any of his ERS, and it almost looked like he was going to go for a move into turn 4, but right now he wants to conserve his ERS. He doesn't want to make a move just yet, and now VIR Marlin is the man who leads this Grand Prix after that incident between Rudy Hullett and Lattice. So it is now VIR leading this Grand Prix, and currently the entire grid in a VIR sandwich, with Marlin in P1. Daniel finds himself down in P20. So Talent Factory with both drivers currently on the podium, and OP right behind them in P4 and 5. FVR Stefano finds himself in P6, NLR Axinio in P7, and Ralchio looking to score QRT's first points of the season. Rudy Hullett, though, even after his spin, he's looking to make a comeback. He sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, currently 1.5 seconds off of the top 8, and he'll be trying to get himself into that position. Bradders now, with the power of DRS, looks to that inside line of Marlin into into turn number 3. You can see squeezing him wide on that exit, trying to help his teammate get past the Mercedes driver Cian, ducking into the slipstream of VIR Marlon, but Marlon not going down without a fight. He's going to try and hold the outside line into turn number 4, but he concedes the position to Bradders, who are possibly going for a switchback maneuver, and a great one at that, as he now has the outside line for turn number 6. Can he possibly hold it? It looks like he might. This would be brilliant defense from Marlon. He's going to have the outside line for turn number 7. Can he keep his nose in into turn number 8? No, he cannot, and he loses a position to Bradders, but he's showing that he is still very competitive and that he can get himself back ahead of Bradders if he so pleases. Some great racecraft between the two drivers. Is VIR Marlon going to try and get back into that race lead? He obviously knows he's between the two Talent Factory drivers, not a position you want to be in, as Bradders and Cian are going to do everything to work together to get both drivers ahead of the Mercedes. And you can see Cian depleting his ERS now down this main straight, and into turn number 3. He's going to be braking as hard as possible with that inside line on VIR Marlon. Squeeze them to the outside again. Marlon getting on the power a little bit too early. Almost a similar incident with what happened with Benza, but thankfully both drivers keep it pointing in a straight line, and Marlon has now been overtaken by both Talent Factory drivers, and now he's got the two OP drivers to worry about. So it looks like the top two teams really using teamwork to their advantage.
Yeah, before these moves happened, I really thought Marlon at least had a bit of an outside shot now to win this race. Of course, he's not in PSG F1 for no reason. We know he is no slouch at all. But now Talent Factory in 1 and 2, how quickly can those favors change after that incident there? We assume it was an incident there between Rudy Hullet and Latest, who himself has unfortunately actually dropped down to last after multiple mistakes. Perhaps some damage involved, maybe just being flustered after what possibly was an incident there in that midfield. And yeah, now Talent Factory 1 and 2, and certainly Marlon is in a very uncomfortable position here, as I think Axelinho might be lining up something here on Stefano, just sticking back a little bit now, keeping out of that slipstream from the McLaren. Oh, there's slight contact from the back there, as Axelinho slightly misjudges that braking point. Perhaps something going on as well there with the outplayed racing drivers, as one of them went pretty deep into turn 3 as well. But for the moment, it is Talent Factory in 1 and 2, 4 and 5 for Outplayed Racing, with Marlon being the meat in that sandwich, and super close stuff. Just how long will this continue?
Yeah, it's anyone's game. Rauco now in an NLR sandwich as he tries to keep on the back of Axelinho, and gave him a slight tap there into turn number 4, but continues on racing. Thankfully, he doesn't have any wing damage because of that. OP Benza and Ray getting caught up in a little bit of an altercation there. I'm not too sure what was happening between them. But they're both still in P4 and P5. I think they tried to go for a position change, which they are now doing now, as Benza overtakes Ray and moves up into P4. And now he is going to be the man launching an attack on VIR Marlon. And OP really playing this quite nicely. Talent Factory approaching with a similar strategy, allowing the driver behind to regain his ERS up to 100%, and then taking the lead and using that ERS to try and pull away from the drivers behind and make overtakes too. So now obviously Ray, he's used a bit of his ERS, and now OP Benza is the man with 100% ERS, and he is on the back of Marlon, so he'll be looking to make a move on the VIR driver, who's currently doing quite a good job to hold his own in P3, currently on a podium position, which would be a fantastic result for Virtual Insanity Racing. Hopefully he can hang on to it, as obviously it's not been in the greatest state for his teammate VIR Daniel. He'll want to score some points for his team and move them up in the championship standings. Currently, NLR Rudy Hullet has done an amazing job to recover his Grand Prix after that altercation between himself and Latest. He's now moved up into the top 9 and caught back up to the DRS of the top 8, and he's also carried Grimbos with him. So now the top 10 all within DRS of each other, as it was a few laps ago. OP Benson now using all of his ERS to get past VIR Marlon, and he does so nice and neatly down the back straight there, and into turn number 3. He now finds himself in P3 as Marlon getting a bit too early on the power there out of turn number 3. So that seems to be a place where the VIR driver is struggling. We've seen it plenty of times where he's getting a bit of wheel spin out of that third turn. So I think Ray is definitely going to notice that, maybe spot a weakness and go for a move into turn number 4 after getting a good exit. But We'll have to see, is Ray taking notice of these little details? When is he going to make his move? How is he going to make it? I'm sure he's planning laps and laps into the future to make sure his team can get the best result possible. But a familiar sight, if you watched last season, Talent Factory find themselves in P1 and P2. They got plenty of those last season in CTC. Can they get their first of the season here in round number 2 of this second season of or the second round of the season, I should say, as QRT Hein gets a 3-second time penalty. G League Matthew, who was on the medium compound tires, is now boxed for the hard compound tires. So he comes into the pit lane now and makes his first stop of the race. The only driver to start on the medium compounded tires, so make sure to keep an eye on the driver who currently finds himself down in P17, as he could possibly do well, but I think he's going to lose a lot of time and struggle for pace, since all of the other drivers have the power of DRS, while all he's got is the clean air and some cold hard compound tires. So he's definitely going to struggle. But the battle between the top 10 rages on, and it's looking very, very close. But OP Ray, I think he'll be focused now on getting ahead of Marlon and behind his teammates, so they can work together. OP can work together to possibly launch an attack on Talent Factory. So as they head out of the final turn now, FVR Stefano currently in P6 for FVR, doing a decent job for his team, which is currently P2 in the championship, although the same can't be said for his teammate FVR Nardi Perez, who's currently down in P18 and on the soft compound of tyres, so he'll definitely be hoping for a safety car in this race. Otherwise it looks quite unlikely that he'll be scoring any points. You can see that's a mistake from Kilcree as he loses 3 positions there down the back straight. Kilcree, after a great start moving from P10 or P19 to P11, has been struggling with the consistency, losing positions here and there, and he's now down to P15 and 1 position ahead of his teammate, although there's 16 seconds between himself and the other Alfa Romeo of Nico F1. So he's really got to work on his consistency now and hopefully make those positions back up and get himself into a decent position. But you can see there's a split between the top 10 and the rest of the field. So QRT, the QRT Academy, I should say, currently leading this train with Javi and Ryan in P11 and P12. But here in CTC, you only get championship points for finishing in the top 10, with the race winner getting 15 points total. So a little bit different to the usual F1 point system, but it is still the top 10 who will be scoring points in this Grand Prix. So if you finish outside of there, it's not going to be too much use for your team. But QRT Ralco finds himself in P8, and he'll be looking to score the first few points for QRT in this competition. OP Benza currently on the back of Brothers, and he's very, very close to the Ferrari driver, and he's got plenty of ERS to play with, so I think he's got every opportunity to overtake Brothers if he really wants to, and that would definitely cause some troubles for Talent Factories. He heads through turn number 6 there. You can see getting up on the curb and unsettling his car slightly. But yeah, you can see VIR Marlon is going to possibly try to take advantage of that, as Ray is still in P5. He hasn't overtaken Marlon yet, and that could definitely hurt them on the strategical front up against Talent Factory. So I think Ray really needs to get a move on now and try and move himself into the top 4 to hopefully assist his teammate.
Oh, I think the pit stop's now starting to happen. Rudy Hullett, the first one to blink, heading onto the medium tires already. So an undercut looking to be happening there from the Red Bull garage. And I think NLR will plant this probably to some degree. The pit stop phases would have started about this lap anyway, so I would have predicted. So Rudy Hullett, the first one to be in that pit lane and looking to put some pressure on these top drivers. But yeah, as you said there, Outplay Racing there being split by the VIR driver of Marlon could be interesting on the strategy front, though in general, the teams in general who do have those 2 drivers up top, like Talent Factory, of course, 1 and 2, 3 and 5 there for Outplayed Racing, they might be having a bit of a tough time on strategy, a little bit of a headache, I would say, perhaps due to them being so close together on the track. They can't just pit on the same lap, obviously, that's not going to happen in any circumstance, but yeah, now it's going to be about who blinks first. And I think it is Bradders there in second place is going to be heading into that pit lane first. So close there with that racing line. It's so dangerous pretty much every single time. But it is, one of the outplayed racing drivers in two. Ray is in, Stefano is into the pit lane. Raukio follows him in along with Grimbos. And now it's going to be very, very interesting to see as to where Ruti Hullet fails out in all of this. P15 for the moment, but now, almost half the grid into this pit lane now. And the drivers with a lot of ERS will now be using all of that battery to see if they made their undercuts or overcuts on their parts work. Kian certainly is one who's looking to put that to good use, having gap Benza to almost 0.8 of a second, that is just not able to get out of the DRS. So very, very close stuff. Ruti Hullet has indeed still rejoined behind the McLaren of Stefano, but with warmer tires, but barely any ERS. Just how much of an impact can the Red Bull driver make? He's super close to the back of the McLaren, isn't he? So maybe now, without DRS as well for Stefano, this could be an opportunity for Ruti Hullet. Though that ERS might just be hurting him a little bit. And will he go for this overtake? Yes, he will. To the inside, down to turn 4. He's looking for the opportunity. I think he's got a chance of making this pass work. And indeed, Stefano does back out of the move for the moment. Ruti Hullet into P10, jumps a few positions, and now the top 3, top 4, probably top 5 drivers in total will be into the pit lane. Kian, Benza, Marlon, and Alex Salino all reacting there. And the pit stops are well and truly underway. Now let's see who will be heading out on top in this one. This is going to be very, very close for sure. Ruti Hullet through the final corner, the first one to pit. The gap is pretty big, though, to some of these drivers. Just Xavi and Hines staying out for the moment. Kian is still in that race lead. Where is Bradders in comparison? Bradders will be in front of his teammate. And Benza is still right behind, so it's just the position swapped for Talent Factory. Bradders now in the lead. The effective lead, of course, behind the two QRTA drivers. So Bradders P1, Kian P2 in effect. It's still looking pretty much the same. But Marlon looks like he has lost out a fair bit so far, being behind Benza. And now it's 1-2 for Talent Factory, 3-4 for Outplayed Racing.
And you can see FVR Stefano is trying to gain the position on NLR Ruti Hullet, who's really struggling with the ERS. And FVR Stefano, as they head into turn number 6, moves up into P8. It's a beautiful undercut from Ruti Hullet. He used all of his ERS and he did gain 2 positions because of it. But at the end of it all, he falls down. Well, actually, no, still gains 2 positions because he's now ahead of Raukio and Axelino, and is effectively in P7 after being in P9. So a great undercut from NLR Ruti Hullet, but obviously you had to use a lot of ERS to get there. He's now under 10% ERS. He's going to be very vulnerable, as you can see drivers setting new fastest laps of the Grand Prix. VIR Marlon being undercut by Ray. So Ray is now ahead of both Marlon and Benza. So very important indeed, and a crucial move for Ray to get himself ahead of the VIR driver, who's really trying his best. He's up solo against the 2 heavy hitters in this competitive team championship, Talent Factory and OP. So he's really trying his best, and he can still finish best of the rest here as he finds himself in effectively P5 after the QRTA driver of Hein comes into the pit lane for his first stop, although he's going for quite the aggressive overcut. Meanwhile, his teammate QRT Ralco is going to the outside line of turn number 6. Can't commit to that move on Ruti Hullet just yet. And obviously, Ruti Hullet, having that low ERS, he's really struggling now just to keep within the DRS of FVR Stefano ahead of him. So Raukio is in a good position to possibly make a move on him. So even though Ruti Hullet has gained positions from the undercut, is it going to play to his advantage? Because now he's really struggling relative to the drivers ahead of him. And with FVR Stefano just ahead of him, setting fastest laps of the Grand Prix, it's definitely not helping his efforts of maintaining that DRS. But meanwhile, you can see OP Ray is very close to the back of Talent Factory Kian into turn number 3. Had a little look to the outside line there as VIR Marlon is going side by side with Benza. The outside line for the VIR driver, and he gets a good exit out of turn number 3, and it looks like he's going to commit to the move on the OP driver and get himself back up into top 4 position, or top 5 I should say. But Benza is battling back. You can see contact between the 2 drivers as it was at the start of the Grand Prix, but Marlon making a brilliant move there to move himself up into the top 5, and he is single-handedly taking on the top 2 teams in this competition. He moves himself into a net P4 and ahead of OP Benza. Marlon, you really have to credit his performance up until this point. He's doing a brilliant job to battle against the teamwork between the 2 OP drivers, as OP Benza, I did see that correctly, made a mistake through turn number 9, and he loses a position to FVR Stefano and is now down to P7 and a net P6. So A big mistake there. Out of turn number 9 means he loses a position not only to Marlon, but FVR Stefano too. As you can see, QRT Hein has now lost his lead that he had by not boxing. OP Ray is going side by side with VIR Marlon. Once again, Marlon is doing a fantastic job. He's overtaken both of the OP drivers in 2 laps time. VIR Marlon is putting on a fantastic display, and one you need to keep your eyes on, because if you blink, you might miss another move from the VIR driver. But now he's got to deal with the traffic from the QRT Hein driver ahead of him, who's still yet to box, willing to cause some chaos. Is the QRT driver in the hopes of possibly helping out his teammate Ralkio? Is he going to come into the pit lane this lap? No, he accepts that he's not going to be scoring points, so instead going for a bit of a dodgy tactic to try and cause some disruption at the top of the field. So VIR Marlon, now he's got to be smart about this, and he's going to navigate his way past the QRT driver. But a magnificent performance from VIR Marlon, who overtakes both OP drivers in 2 laps time.
That was a very great set of moves there indeed from Marlon, who's now having to make this overtake. He has to make this as soon as he possibly can. Now into turn 3, he's on the inside. No real contest put up there from Hein, as Marlon is back up to P3. And he's now having to catch those Talent Factory drivers who've been able to get through the Alpine driver there of Hein pretty quickly. The gap is just under 9/10 of a second, but I think Marlon's just going to be able to hold on to this. Ray now makes his way past Hein as well as he gets spun around there in the background. Hein is now at the back and is losing out on these positions. Ruti Hullet making his way actually past Stefano as well in all of that. As, yeah, it's still looking to be very, very close here. Up into the top 5 again is the pole sitter, but he hasn't got the DRS in front of Ray in that AlphaTauri, in that sister car. In real life, of course, you'd say back off a little bit so that I can get that DRS, but it's not like this, of course, in this game. All equal cars, no real team games going on here. So Ruti Hullet is going to have to do everything in his power to get into that top 4 DRS again, which he hasn't managed to do for this second back straight. So it's going to be very, very tough now to hold off Stefano again, but it could be smart as well to just let him through and try to get him pulled into that DRS again, though he's going to have to look out for Benzer. Benzer's on the inside in turn 3, and this is certainly not easy at all. Yeah, indeed, Ruti Hullet losing 2 places in the space of just 3 corners. Has now got Raukio behind him as well on the fresher tyres. Benzer, in fact, is lining up another one here on Stefano, isn't he? What a great set of moves here it would be from Benzer if he can make his way past the Dutch FVR driver, and it looks like he can. Great stuff from Benzer, back up to P5, and we are basically back at square one now. Talent Factory in the lead. 4 and 5 for Outplay Racing, and in between, meat in the sandwich, we've got Marlon for Virtual Insanity Racing. What some tense stuff going on here.
It certainly is. Some brilliant racing between the drivers. VIR Marlon doing a great job for his team. Talent Factory in P1 and P2, just as it was last season. And OP trying their best to get at least one driver onto the podium, as OP Benza, after that mistake, he's struggling. Now in the top 5, he has to get himself back into the DRS of his teammate. Meanwhile, at Talent Factory, going for a position swap. Kian has actually got less ERS. He's below 10% ERS, so both Talent Factory drivers are using a lot of ERS. They're trying their very best to pull away from VIR Marlon, but Marlon is not budging not one bit. He is staying within the DRS of the top 2, and he is going to put up a battle against the 2 Talent Factory drivers. VIR Marlon, he is the man to watch in this Grand Prix so far, doing a great job, and an outside shot out of the top 2 teams in this competition. He could be scoring some very, very big points for VIR this race. Meanwhile, FVR Stefano and Ruti Hullet having quite the big battle between them, with OP Benza now getting ahead of both of them and up into P5. He's going to try and pull away from FVR Stefano, but Stefano's keeping up a good pace and he's staying within that DRS, and OP Benza is below 10% ERS, so he's going to be losing out a little bit on the straights. So he's definitely going to struggle to pull away and also catch up to his teammate ahead, who cannot really slow down because Ray is having the struggles of his own, because he's also trying to stay within the DRS of the top 3. So OP in a very tricky position indeed. Ralkio breaking very late into turn 3, and a possible move around the outside. Ruti Hullet wasn't expecting it, does not leave the space into turn number 3 and maintains his P7 position. But Ralkio in a fantastic position along with Axelinho too, because both drivers have about 50% ERS. Meanwhile, the 3 drivers ahead of them, of Hullet, Stefano, and Benza, all below 20% ERS. So definitely keep an eye on QRT Ralchio and also NLR Axelinho. They both got a good chance of making up some positions in this Grand Prix. But the laps absolutely flying by in this eventful race that we've had so far. Currently on lap 26 of 36 as Kian crosses the line to begin lap number 26, which means we only have 10 laps of racing to go. So just under a third of the race to go, and it really is anyone's game. But it's looking quite likely that Talent Factory can secure their first 1-2 of the season.
Yes, Talent Factory looking very strong at the moment. Marlon is still on their back, but it looks like they're just a little too assured of this. Kian is using some of that battery, maybe trying to pull Bradders with him a little bit, just to ensure there is no threat going on from that Mercedes driver behind. Ray is sticking behind too, seeing what can happen. Kilgree there in P12 now, making this move on Javi as well. So a lot of battling going on in these unfortunately non-points paying positions. We've had this going on up and down the field. It's great to see. Javi pulling to the inside there, can't make anything work into turn 4. But certainly, these battles are going on up and down the field. It's so tense. And while the top 4 have been getting away slightly, Benzer's now leading this next train, as Stefano, Ruti Hullet, and Ralchio Axelinho as well, following right behind as he actually goes a little bit wide, exiting turn 9, which certainly wouldn't have done him too good. Hopefully, for his sake, of course, no warnings going on there. But might he just want to get a little move on here? Just 10 more laps to go. And these moves are going to have to happen soon if they should happen. Therefore, even though he's got the freshest tires, it is going to be very hard to overtake in these DRS trains. Still, it's definitely not impossible to overtake around here. We've seen it in other championships. We've seen also the potential of safety cars, which is always present on this racetrack. And track limits as well. I'm surprised to not see anything at all in these top 10 drivers. And so, very good job on them, that they are all sorting this out realistically on the racing track. So good stuff from them. Hopefully it stays this way so we won't have to have anything decided on that front. I think now Benzer is looking to find a little bit of that pace back. Look at him. He's now back in DRS range of his teammate. And now this might just be a very good setup for him, as he's back in the range, and Stefano has followed him through. So we're now back to a top 9 DRS train, but Stefano picks up a time penalty. And, well, if you could say it is a commentator's curse on the top 10 slightly, well, there you go. Stefano, the first one to get penalized in this top 10. And right now, that would drop him a fair few positions. So he's going to have to look out to not make any more mistakes now.
And a brilliant point you mentioned there. Apart from obviously commentator's curse coming into play, Stefano getting a 3-second time penalty as soon as it was mentioned. But most drivers in the top 13 have kept it consistent, and they don't have any time penalties at a circuit, at least in real life, that is known for the drivers extending the track limits and really making those mistakes, getting those warnings and time penalties. So it's absolutely amazing to see the level of competition that we are witnessing here. None of the drivers in the top 13, apart from FVR Stefano, getting 3-second time penalties. So it's all going to be decided on track. Where you finish on track is going to be decisive of how many points you get towards your championship standings. Apart from FVR Stefano, is going to drop down to around P9 and possibly P10 if Grimbills can pick up the pace. OP Benza doing a brilliant job with less than 10% ERS on pure merit alone. He's got himself back into the DRS of his teammate. I'm not sure he'll be able to do too much, obviously, with that lack of ERS. He's going to struggle to make moves, but I think for the next couple of laps now, he's going to be conserving his ERS and hopefully can cause some havoc in the top 4 and assist his teammate in trying to overtake VIR Marlin and the 2 Talent Factory guys. But you can see the top 3 for the past couple of laps, they've been just doing their best to conserve their ERS, although Talent Factory Kian, who's leading this race, he's not been conserving that ERS. He's been doing his best to maintain the pace and make sure that Bradders isn't under any pressure from Marlon behind. So Cian is below 10% ERS, but he's got that buffer of Bradders behind him who's got 50% ERS. Marlon also on 50% ERS. So Marlon could be a real thorn in the side of Talent Factory, and there's every chance that he could break into a top 2 position, and what a sight to behold that could be. But 6 laps of racing to go. Plenty of overtaking opportunities, and Marlon will be looking to capitalize off of any mistakes that the Talent Factory drivers make and any weakness in their defense. But we know Talent Factory, an extremely strong team, and they are keeping it very consistent, and it's very good to see from Talent Factory Cian after obviously disconnecting last race and finishing down in P8 after a decent recovery. Thankfully, no connection issues today. He's in P1, he's driving a great and consistent race, and he's got a good chance of finishing in a P1 and P2 position for his team. So Talent Factory in a very strong position as per usual. Meanwhile, FER Stefano has now lost the DRS to the top 5, and that could really put him under some pressure from Rudy Hullet behind.
Yeah, indeed. It's going a bit from bad to worse here for the FVR driver in P6. Just losing touch again with the top 5. Has he got the DRS down the straight? He does not. And he's now going to have to use a lot of his battery, which he does not have. Will it be enough till the detection point? Just about. I believe he has just snuck into the DRS range again. But I feel like this could just be a little bit coordinated as well from Talent Factory. I mean, Cian is constantly low on ERS, while Bradders just has that little buffer to his teammate to use his ERS without threatening his teammate. Now Marlon is relatively close, actually, exiting turn 3, but no move yet to happen. I don't think it is really a big spot to be able to overtake on. So right now, a very good job, Talent Factory, managing this pretty much to perfection, as you are pretty much used to from the last season as well. We've seen Rudy and Legend being so strong, and Cian and Bradders is certainly now the new star lineup, it looks like, for Talent Factory, heading towards a 1-2, which we are so used to in this competitive team championship. But they're always there on merit, capitalizing off these racing situations, which we've had earlier as well. With just 5 laps to go, they're just looking so assured up top, aren't they? Right now, Marlon is definitely pushing. Bradders is going to have to use some of his battery, but due to being behind Cian, he has been able to save that up, and therefore Marlon does not have as big a chance to overtake. He's using some battery, but it's just not coming to fruition at all. So a very good job from Talent Factory so far. To keep it into these top 2 positions. Ray behind Marlon as well. Can't really do anything. Going a touch deep into turn 3, but just making that work again for himself. Benza in P5 as well, holding on to the train just about. Nothing to be gained here on penalties, and the one struggling the most is Stefano, who's now looking to have a threat from behind. Rutiola to the inside of turn 4, gets through for the moment. Now a switchback looking to happen. Stefano can't make anything work though, and now it's Rutiola back into P6 on the road. So picking off probably what would be the best result for NLR possible at this stage. Axeline currently jumping up to P8 along with Raukio with a very good performance in P7 on penalties at the moment. And one driver we haven't really mentioned, Grimbo's there in P10 as well, picking off 1 point for G-League again after what has been a great first round. They'll be looking to get on the sheet again after this race. It's looking very good for them. 7-second gap behind to Kilcree. And yeah, not looking like he's being threatened at all in this racing situation. But that's unlike saying for that top 5, which is still very much contested. Just 4 and a bit laps to go, and this could still go anyone's way.
It definitely could, and Talent Factory's chances looking better and better by the lap, but that's a mistake there from Stefano. Or no, Stefano tried to make the move on Rudy Hullet, but Rudy Hullet defending his position, getting the better exit out of turn number 3, but now Stefano's compromised into turn number 4. Ralkio is going to try and make the move on the McLaren driver, and he gets the better exit out of turn number 4, and now Axelinho is going to try and make the move, and he also gets a better exit out of turn number 4, which means FVR Stefano goes from P6 to now P9 in just 2 laps time, and he's got himself a 3-second time penalty. Thankfully Grimbos is above 3 seconds ahead, so he won't be losing any positions now because of that time penalty. But Stefano, the man who started in a top 4 position, if I'm not mistaken, or no, started in the top 8, I'm sorry. He obviously did a lot better with his banker time, but then obviously couldn't improve upon that, so he's now down into P9 after getting teamed up on by Ralkio, Axelino, and Rudy Hullett, and they now all overtake him. And NLR currently in P6 and P8, doing a decent job for their team, and the third best result. Although actually, no, I think VIR Marlin is going to be taking the third best result home and be scoring more points than both of the NLR drivers combined. So that just shows the performance that Marlin is currently putting in. But I think something to mention is Talent Factory, currently the reigning champions coming into this round, who or into the season I should say, who also won the championship 2 rounds early last season. Neither of their drivers began on the 2 front rows of the grid, on the first and the second row of the grid, so both drivers started outside of the top 4, and they are now P1 and P2. So this is definitely not luck from Talent Factory, it is pure skill. They started from P5 and P10, they now find themselves P1 and P2. So a brilliant job from Talent Factory, showing why they are the top dogs here in the competitive team championship and looking to score another 1-2. But now OP Ray has been using his ERS for the past couple of lap times. Meanwhile, Benza has been conserving it. It's the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix, and he is now switching positions with his teammate. But into turn number 3, as they switch positions, he makes a mistake, goes deep and loses time, and now it looks like OP might have no chance at all at competing for a podium in this race, because OP Benza does not have the DRS of VIR Marlin, and we are approaching the final lap of this Grand Prix. So OP Benza has really compromised himself, although I'm not too sure he would have been able to overtake VIR Marlin anyways, even if he was in the DRS, because Marlin has been showing phenomenal pace in this race. Bradders and Kian trying to pick up the pace now for this final lap of the Grand Prix. VIR Daniel gets himself another 3-second time penalty. It is now the final lap of the Grand Prix, and as VIR Marlin comes out of the final turn, he does not have the power of DRS, so it looks like Talent Factory on the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix using everything in their power to pull away from VIR Marlin, and try as he might, he could not stay within the DRS. This now means that mistake from OP Benza could be quite costly, because he has a perfect opportunity to overtake VIR Marlin, but is he going to be close enough? As they head out of turn number 3, we're seeing a battle between NLR, Axinio and Ralkio. Axinio picked up a 3-second time penalty, so whether he overtakes him or not, he's not going to be battling for points in this situation, as Ralkio deciding not to fight too hard. Axelinho maintains that P7 now as he gets ahead of the QRT driver, but it looks like Talent Factory Kian, as he heads through the final sector now, the man who started P10 on the grid, made a brilliant start, gaining 5 positions and constantly moving up through the field. He goes from P10 to P1 to complete a Talent Factory 1-2. Kian comes across the line to win the Austrian Grand Prix. Brothers finishing P2 for his team. It's a 1-2 for Talent Factory. VIR Marlin, after a brilliant display of racecraft and pace, finishes on the podium for VIR, a result that they will definitely be ecstatic with. You can see Ray finishing P4 as Benza allows him through on the line, and OP finishing P4 and P5, the second best result out of the field. NLR bring it home in P6 and P8 with the 4th best result in the field. QRT Ralco scores the first points for QRT, and that now means that QRT Academy is the only team to not score points in this championship, although Javi was in P11, 1 position off that points paying position, and FVR Stefano loses out to Grimbos by just 37 1/1000ths of a second. He now falls from P9 to P10. But what a brilliant race, and I'm sure the first of many 1-2s for Talent Factory, and it only took them 2 rounds to score their first 1-2.
Yeah, brilliantly played from Talent Factory. You can only applaud these kind of performances, and I think this just goes to show racecraft is topping everything in these kind of scenarios. Daniel there has just had a spin actually in the final corner, so he's going to be the last to finish this Austrian Grand Prix. 1 and 2 for Talent Factory, a very familiar sight, but certainly one we might just have to get used to for this season again. Kian wins, Brad is in second, and the podium being rounded out by VIR Marlon. Kian picks up driver of the day, and I feel like from a game standard, that's actually pretty deserved either way. Picking their way through the field as they now come out onto the podium. Yeah, very, very deserved. this 1-2 Talent Factory, just with brilliant racecraft, profiting from other drivers' mistakes, finding themselves in this top position. And I mean, what a performance, and great stuff from them.
And they're now going to celebrate their winner's trophy. 1-2 maximum points achieved. Although I think they might have missed out on the fastest lap point. I'm not too sure about that. But nevertheless, they've gained plenty of points from this race and further extend their lead in the championship. As FVR, they're not going to be maintaining that P2 position that they had after only scoring 1 point here in Austria. OP will most likely be taking that P2 position after P4 and P5 for the OP team. A good result from them, although definitely something they need to work on and improve on if they want to challenge with Talent Factory, because it just seemed like they did not have the pace to keep up with the two Ferraris. They just could not compete with Kian and Bradders, who were on another level today. VIR, though, I'm sure they'll be very happy with their performance and looking towards the future, because Marlon looking very promising in this championship, scoring a podium, and there's every chance that he could improve upon that result and maybe get an even better one next time out. NLR finishing P6 and P8 to hopefully, I think that will maintain their P3 position. But a brilliant race here in CTC, as it usually is at Austria. Always an eventful race with plenty of overtaking action. But now, at the end of this Grand Prix, I do have to ask, for your driver of the day, do you agree with the game on Talent Factory Key and getting that driver of the day? Or is there anyone else in the field that really impressed you today?
There have been a few standout performances, really. I think Kian being given this Driver of the Day award is basically fair enough. It's very representative of how this race has gone, but I have to put out a mention as well to GL Grimbos in P9, coming from pretty much the back of the field, 17th all the way up to P9. Great performance from him, gaining 2 points for the G League team, and I think a very good job from him as well, personally.
Yeah, he definitely did a decent race there. And I think if I had to pick one driver of the day, I think I've definitely shown it throughout this race. I was extremely impressed with VIR Marlon's performance. Obviously, he started P3 on the grid. He did start ahead of both of the Talent Factory drivers, but he was out there by himself in the top 5, which consisted of both the Talent Factory drivers and both of the OP drivers. He was battling by himself, flying solo, and to manage to get that podium at the end of the race, I think that's a brilliant result from a VIR Marlon. So he definitely has to get my driver of the day. But obviously, here are your championship standings. Outplayed Racing will definitely be moving up to P2 after that performance. VIR, who only scored 2 points last time out, they will be jumping up to, I think, P4 in the standings, with NLR holding their P3 position, as they're going to take Formula Virtual Racing. We're going to fall down quite a few positions after definitely a disappointing result, not only for Stefano, but also Nardi Perez too, who really struggled in that Grand Prix. Not a single safety car in that race, so all the drivers who got caught out in those initial few laps with those inconsistencies and those mistakes, they really did not get a chance to fight back. So yeah, not a single safety car. So some great clean racing that we saw today, which is amazing to see, and hopefully something we see in the future. But that is the end of this Austrian Grand Prix and round 2 of this stage of aces. Make sure to join us next week, where we arrive at the 3rd ace of Azerbaijan, which should be definitely an eventful Grand Prix. Plenty of overtaking opportunities, even for street circuits. So hopefully we see some exciting action. But that has been all from myself and Alex the G, and we hope to see you all next week for the final round of the first stage, which is the stage of aces. See you all next week for round number 3.